Good afternoon, everybody. A little sound check. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I hope you're having a good show so far, and thank you for taking the time to come and listen to this session. My name's John Thorpe. I'm from Arras People, and what I'm going to look at today is the mystical market. So talk about this market, talk a little about differentiating yourself in that market, and also take a look at what are you worth, because again, that's something we get asked on a regular basis. How much am I worth in this particular market? So for those of you that don't know anything about Arras People, we're a project management, recruitment and careers specialist company established in 2002, and we're just 100% focused on program and project management space. So we're not a generalist recruitment. We don't do cleaners, we don't do administrators. We are purely focused on the project space. One of the things, the information that we're going to be using today is from the Project Management Benchmark Report. Has anybody come across the benchmark report? Yeah, that's good. And it's a report now. We've been doing this for 12 years, which I was thinking about it in context a couple of weeks ago. The iPhone has only been around for 10 years, and we started this 12 years ago. And back in those days, we started it because we were looking for information about the project management marketplace, and we couldn't find any. You know, Google, although it was about, it wasn't full of the stuff that's available today. And so we actually started the report, we tried it, and 12 years later, we're still doing it. So you've got a copy. If you can't find a copy, then please do come and have a look. Come and see us on the stand, and you'll be able to pick up a copy. So on average, we talk about 2,500 people putting into this. So we run it by a survey. So in terms of a data set, it's pretty good at certain levels, but we would always love more people to contribute. So if you get an invite this year, please put into the pot, because the more people that do, the better the quality of the data that comes out. Now, the only last thing I would say is, the project management report is slightly different because it's actually not delivered with a bias in terms of it's not trying to push APM, it's not trying to push prints, it's not so the data is pretty clean and as collected in terms of the message that it's giving back to you as practitioners. So, you know, we haven't got an axe to grind, we haven't got a marketing message to push. So we like to think that in terms of a picture, it's a pretty good reflection of what's going on in the marketplace. So talking about the marketplace, anybody disagree with that statement that we're living in a challenging and changing world? Now, it's challenging and changing, but hopefully as PPM practitioners, that's good news, because change is actually good for us, because that's our livelihood, that's where our jobs come from. And we need to be thinking about it. And when I was putting this slide together, it was like, actually, I could have put this slide together many times over in terms of some of the buzzwords, some of the things that are happening to us. But I think they sort of come together in terms of we've got lots of economic things that are happening to us, lots of political things that are impacting our lives, such as, I've been told not to mention the word, but Brexit is creating, lots of uncertainty. We've got globalization, which has a massive impact on what we're doing and the way the UK economy is performing. We've got massive steps forward in terms of technology. Anybody involved in digitization or digital projects? Everything's change. And not only that, we've got lots of new methods as well. So, the most, I suppose, high profile one of recent times being agile. So again, who's into agile? Who's got the agile practitioners? It's something that is actually impacting the whole of the marketplace. Although, interestingly, if you look in the benchmark report, it seems that there's a lot more talk about agile than actually people actively involved in doing it. So it's one of those interesting things. I think one of the things that really stands out for me is the faster, cheaper, better. Now, faster, I see a lot of the time. Cheaper, yes. Better, questionable sometimes. So, these are the things that impact what we do as project and project management practitioners. So looking at the economic aspects, we're in an interesting situation, which I don't know how many people of you read all the commentary, but there's so many people that know about economics that are at the moment saying, we don't really know what's going on. I think the most interesting one is the unemployment and inflation. Now, the fact that we've got inflation starting to creep up again and unemployment at the lowest level in over 40 years, yet we're not seeing any wage inflation. So typically we would expect to see wage inflation, but it's not happening. It's a bit odd, but it's all these other things that are affecting the market. And I suppose two of the key ones that we sort of see is, since 2008, we've seen a strange impact on the market. It was a strange recession in that many people didn't lose the jobs on the level that you would typically see in a recessionary period. But what a lot of people did was took sacrifices in terms of hours or salary. And many organisations were really keen to keep hold of the people because they could see a skills shortage. So they didn't want to pay them as much, but they wanted to keep them. And lots of people said, I'd rather have a job with lower pay than not have a job. So we've got all these strange levers going on in the marketplace that ultimately impact us all and have an impact on where we're going and what we can do. The other big thing that's, I suppose, in the news, and it's something that's really important, is this fact or fiction. We hear Donald Trump all the time talking about false news. And we live in a time of, information overload. So we've got so many different sources. I saw something this week saying demand for contractors down by 12%. Then we've got London facing a biggest skill gap. We've got London has the biggest surplus of project management people. We've just got so much contradictory information, and it's really hard. People are doing a job, and it's really, really hard to actually work out where is the truth in this information that's been thrown at us. And it's really imperative that, when you look at some information, is it trusted? Do you trust the source? What angle are people coming at? And one of my favourites was a couple of years ago, there was a report that came out from the APM, and surprisingly, APM was put down as the most popular project management accreditation. Now, everybody knows that that's probably not quite true, but in that particular report, that was reported as fact. So I think it's really important that when considering information about the market, people actually think about, do you trust the source? Because that is really, again, something that could have a big impact on the way you look at stuff. The other big change this year, is anybody a contractor in the public sector? So you would have seen a bit of IR35 troubles this year. For those that don't know it, the government decided to make an intervention into the market in terms of contractors. They wanted them to be seen as and treated in exactly the same way as an employee in terms of paying tax, paying national insurance, but actually not getting any of the perks and the benefits of being an employee. This was quite a big change, and it led, again, an interesting fact. Before it was implemented in April, there was a survey that came out that said 85% of contractors were going to walk out of their roles in the public sector. Reality kicked in. In our survey, I think it said about 17% would take that action. And let's put it this way, 85% didn't, and the figures were probably nearer maybe 20%. So again, a combination of actions and data coming into show. Now, for those people that, again, aren't aware, this has upset the marketplace, because we've now got a marketplace that if you're working in the public sector, you're taxed in one manner if you're deemed to be under IR35. Yet if you're working in the private sector, you still work under the old rules, where you can run your limited company, you can pay yourself in dividends, etc., etc. So we've got something that skewed the market, and those contractors that left the public sector made a run for the private sector. What's potentially going to come down the line now is that the Chancellor is going to actually say, I need to balance this market. And we've got a lot of lobbying going on at the moment to try and make sure that in the budget that's due shortly, the Chancellor doesn't actually normalise the market and bring these new regulations in for the private sector workers. So we've got some challenges in terms of how governments implement or influence and affect our workload. So a little health warning that government intervention may seriously impact your wealth, as a number of contractors have found out this year, losing between 15 and maybe 30% of the money that they were taking home beforehand. So it's a big impact. One of the messages we've had from 2008 is many people in the PPM profession are saying, you know, they're seeing tough times. Now, if we look at the remuneration, so we, on the left-hand side there, my pointer won't work. What we see is a picture of stagnation in the market. Now, a lot of people is seeing public sector, we've had the 1% pay cap. Private sector, as I think last year it got up to about 2.7%. But that is coming from a position when, after the 2008 fall in the market, it took a long time for the private sector to start coming back into a positive position. But overall, we're still seeing really challenging times. And the benchmark data 69% of contractors were anticipating that in 2017 their salary or their money that they were bringing home would not change above inflation, or for many it would also fall. And it's, you know, an ongoing picture, and as I was saying earlier on, it's impacting people. And one of the drivers of this is actually, has anybody heard the word churn in the job market? Now, recruiters talk about churn, and when the economy is running correctly, how many people in this room have changed jobs in the last 12 months? Yeah, not many really. I mean, that's a low percentage of the people in the room. And one of the things that drives wages and drives recruitment is actually people changing jobs. And one of the things that's happened during these tough times is people have battened the hatches down. So they've said, I'd rather stay here because at least I'm secure and I've got a job than move somewhere else. I might get a little pay rise, but actually the amount I'll get compared to the risk, because we're project management people and we think about risk, it's not worth it, so I'm going to stay here. And that, again, gives the market the confidence that actually we don't need to start pushing rates up. So we've seen that. And from the contractor side, what we saw in the recessionary period was a lot of people lost their jobs, but instead of becoming unemployed, they became contractors. So suddenly, the market was flooded with people that had never contracted before, but call themselves contractors. So that had a massive impact on rates again, because we actually had a flood of people available in the market, and it drove down rates. That had quite a significant impact. And again, it's something that the market has not yet recovered from. Having said that, it's not all gloom and doom, because you know, we're still, as a profession, if you look at the contractors, you know, we're still running at a good rate. The average is around the 400, the 450, 499 for many practitioners. Although we do see, and this is something that we had before, if I can. We've seen a V starting to appear around the sort of centre point in terms of day rates for contractors. Now, the interesting thing is that the rates have all actually moved downwards. So this peak here used to actually be around 650, 700. And it's actually moved down by about 100, 150 pounds a day. And so we've got a market that is consistently under pressure in terms of rates. Now, it's not all bad news. You know, there are still people on the higher echelons and the people earning the 1,000 a day rates. So those still do exist, but the pressure has been downward in terms of pushing rates. The other thing that we've seen is, in terms of employees, we've seen a stagnation around the 40 to 49,000. So again, that's not really moved in the last 10 years, which is quite unusual. And, you know, we've got lots of people coming into the profession, and what we're seeing is, again, this drop-off of 50 to 59, 60 to 74. And that's a combination of, I think, two things. One is the retirement. So you've got the baby boomers coming into a retirement, and they're the people that traditionally were earning the higher money, and they're dropping off the scale to be replaced by, if you like, the millennials and the younger practitioners who are coming in and being paid less. The other thing that's affecting this area is when people are getting making redundancies and downscaling their workforces, a lot of the time they're picking off the more expensive people in their organisations. So it's having an overall impact on what's happening in terms of the market. To put that into perspective though, the latest average weekly earnings in the UK is £474 a week, and which equates to 24,500 salary. So if we look at the spread of people working in the PPM arena, that's 1% of the contractors are saying that they earn around the average weekly, and 3% of the employees earn around the average weekly. So in terms of a place to be, in terms of earning potential, it's still pretty attractive. So that's some of the things to pull out in terms of the market. Now, the interesting thing here is actually, as an individual, how can I address that market to maximize my opportunity? It's one of the questions that we get asked a lot in terms of people coming to see us, people picking up the phone, people sending contact inquiries into the Arras People website. And what I always like to start with is that if you want to know the context of yourself in the marketplace, then a really good place to start is don't worry about the marketplace, actually start thinking about yourself. How well do you know yourself? Because it's really scary when talking to people that actually they don't have that good picture of themselves or an understanding of themselves to actually be able to think about themselves in a market sense. So it always starts with you, because you are the important thing in this onion ring. The next thing you need to think about is you in your organisation, because your organisation is probably the easiest place where you can benchmark yourself, because your peers will be in your organisation. So thinking about yourself within your organisation, and then thinking about yourself within your organisation and within your domain. So, you know, we've been talking to people today, their domain is telecoms, pharmaceuticals, IT. And all those domains are different, and they have different skill sets, and they have different values in the marketplace. So it's really important to be able to understand yourself within that area. Because if you don't understand those three elements, how can you then even start to think that you can understand yourself in terms of the wider market? Because a large portion of this market is not relevant to you, because you won't have actually anything that allows you to access that wider part of the market. So this is, for me, it's really important, and it applies equally whether you are looking for your next opportunity internally or externally. Because if you're looking for promotion, then you need to be concentrating on you in your organisation, and maybe dipping out as a reference point into what's happening in your domain or your sector, so that you can really position yourself well. If you're looking to move roles, then yes, you need to think about the whole spread. But I think it's really important that people, you know, really do get into that, that sort of mentality. I think who you are, and one of the reasons I believe that this is the starting point. How many people have seen the job ads, you know, these job boards like JobSite that say, one click, load your CV, and we will find you your next job? Have people seen those adverts? Because how can that happen in reality? Because your CV and this magical computer will find you your next job. I mean, it's not going to happen, really, because at some point it might find you an opportunity you could apply for. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will find you your next job. And what you need to be doing is thinking about, you know, internally, how can I drive this forward? So you need to be thinking about, you know, who you are. So what are your beliefs? What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your likes and dislikes? Because actually, if you go for an interview, those are the sort of questions that you probably will get asked. So rather than sit there and go, I'm not sure, it'd be really good if you actually understood, you know, what you had there. So think about you as a person. Then think about yourself in terms of your skills and experience. So what skills and capabilities have you got, and how does that tie in to experience? And that's a great thing in terms of, you know, skills and capabilities, experience. So 17% of people that practice in PPM don't have any accreditations. So actually, are you one of the 17%, or actually are you at the other extreme? I like to call them the 5-star generals. Have you seen the people with, they've got every accreditation under the sun, and they've probably not been able to do anything because all they've been doing is collecting accreditations. So what we need to do is find that balance and understand what we actually offer to the marketplace. And then things like behaviours and career aspirations. So it all starts with us, because we're right at the centre of that onion ring. We are the product, and my experience is that the best salespeople always understand their product. If you're looking for a role, if you're looking for promotion, you are the product. So if you don't understand it, how are you going to be able to sell it? The other thing to think about is you in your organisation and in your domain. Now, one of the things I find quite interesting is I use the term institutionalised, because we meet so many people, and it was also true in 2008, 2009. There were many people came into the marketplace that had not looked for a job for 10, 15 years. And what they found was actually they were a project manager in their environment. Their company had turned them into a project management for company X, because that's what company X wanted. When they came to the market, they suddenly realized they weren't really a project manager. The wider world didn't recognize them as a project management technician or practitioner, because they'd become institutionalized in the organization they work for. So it's really important to think about, has that happened to you? What transferable skills and experience have you got? And actually, can you benchmark that? So there's things like the APM competency framework that you could have a look at. You know, just understand what is a project manager in the round and what is a project manager in your organization or in your domain. Digital's a great one at the moment, because many of the digital project managers are actually digital practitioners with a tiny bit of project management. They're not in, you know, the old school, fully princed up, worried about risk management, worried about this, that, and the other. They're very much into the JDI approach, and it's very informal. But they would look at people with prints and say, oh, probably not for us. So again, it's a matter of, you know, what is relevant in the organization or the domain that you're looking to work in. The tagline on that is, and we say this quite a lot, is one person's project manager is another person's progress chaser. Now, unless you understand where you are, it's very hard to work out if you're a project manager or a progress chaser. It used to be something in, it's a coordinator, or somebody that actually, you know, if you've got a series of events that need to be happening, they're making sure those events are happening. So they're very focused on, it was a job title. Yeah.
It has a feel about it.
Yeah. And then if you are looking at the outer market, then of course what you need to do is think about yourself in the marketplace. So where do your skills fit? Where would your experiences be applicable? What's transferable? Is my profile in demand? Because actually you might be working in a sector where actually there's very, very little demand. And all these things contribute to you understanding where you fit and is there a position for you in the wider market. So what am I worth? Now this is the $1 million question, and most of the time, have we got any average project managers in the audience? No? Okay, so the next few slides are probably not going to be very good for you because most of the data and the data included in our project management is based around averages and spreads. So if we look at the PPM contractors, so a great example, if we look at a project manager, the average was £425 a day. The maximum was £700 a day, and the minimum was £130 a day. Now, that says to me that something's not quite right there, because how could a project manager be worth £130 or £700 if they're both project managers? It sort of gives you a clue that project manager is a catch-all, and all the other elements that I've been talking about, so the domain it's working in, the experience that somebody's got, the market that they're operating in. So all these things need to be borne in mind. So when you look at a number, it's not always that straightforward. These are guides, and it's up to you then to be inquisitive and think about it, or even position yourself and say, actually, yeah, that's probably about where I am. So I'm in that area, or I'm up here. How can I get to the next rate? So how can I get up to be a program manager? Because that's where I want to go. So how can I get that extra 300 quid a day in my pocket? So these are guides, this is information. There is nobody on this earth that can answer that question, how much am I worth? It's really, really difficult. And if we look at employees, then we see exactly the same. So again, we've got project manager average about 46,000. Anybody agree or disagree with that? And again, we've got a maximum of 95,000 going through to 23,000. So again, it gives you a clue that they're probably slightly different in terms of where they are in their career, or where they are in terms of the services that they add. It's interesting. The other thing, has anybody come across Glassdoor? That's another website that if you're looking for salary information, it's probably worth having a look at. But again, what all this does is you go in, you put your role, you put your current salary in, and then it will give you, so project management salaries in London, national average 41, London 48. So again, it will give you an element of a clue, but again, it's based on the data that's in there. The other thing that Glassdoor does is it allows you to drive down. So in here, we've got Royal Bank of Scotland project managers. So it'll give you a clue on that. And then we can see here that actually it can drive down to different organisations. So project manager in HMRC earning about 55,000. Now the interesting thing here is always look at that piece of data, because that's only coming from a data source of 24 people. It's a bit like that survey that says, you know, 9 out of 10 cats preferred, but actually they only looked at 5 cats and they've extrapolated the data. So again, you need to be careful and look where that data's coming from. Another new one is LinkedIn salary. Has anybody come across LinkedIn salary? So that again is trying to, again, add value. So we can see the salary numbers again are very consistent in that 40 to 50k band. And they're doing the same in terms of best paying and also looking down at individual organisations. So Credit Suisse looks like the place to be, 146k a year. One interesting thing in all of this is there's very little contractor data. So these tend to be based around employees rather than looking at contractor salaries. So there's lots of information sources. All I would say is, whatever you do, wherever you go hunting, always make sure that you understand what that data set is about. It's not one-dimensional. It always reminds me, you see the guy driving the JCB when he's got all these levers and, you know, he's pressing a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of this. And trying to pull this data is also a bit like pulling this data together. So it's always going to be a combination of skill level. It's always going to be a combination of experience level. Sector and domain. We all know that some sectors pay a lot more than others. Years ago, I was in the professional services, traditionally always well paid. You know, project managers there were earning a lot more than project managers, say, in the manufacturing. So there is always going to be that sector differential going on. Location. So as seen as the centre of the UK is in London, London tends to pay higher rates. But not always, because sometimes you may have pockets of speciality where they're also paying high rates around different areas of the country. And one of those to watch out for would be around the southwest, because we're going to have nuclear building. They're going to have to start pulling people in and attracting people to the southwest and competing with the MOD and British Aerospace. So that is probably going to be a hot spot in terms of salary over the next few years. It could also happen in the southeast where you're going to have other nuclear builds going on. You've got Crossrail. So there's all these different things that impact the salaries that are on offer. And unfortunately, even though we apparently live in enlightened days, your age and also your gender may well impact that salary as well. So I know that shouldn't happen, but the reality of it in the world, it does happen. It's not right, but you know, I'm sure we're making progress in terms of trying to correct some of those things. So a closing thought is the market is a mythical thing. And as practitioners, what we need to identify and understand is our market. So what is our addressable market? It's fine having an aspiration to move somewhere, but in the immediate, I need my next contract, I need my next job. It's really important to think about your market rather than the market. And if I could change anything in the next few years, it would be to stop people picking up the phone and saying, "Hi John, how's the market?" Because it doesn't exist. The market is not there. There's no such thing. I would much rather you say, "Hi John, I work in IT, I've got this sort of experience, how's the market looking for me to move on in that domain?" At least then it looks like you've thought about it a little bit. But like I say, the market is a mythical thing. No? Right, well, I'll say thank you, thanks for your time, and hope you got something out of that. If you'd like a copy of the benchmark report, there's some down at the front, or come and visit us on our stand. Thank you.